We welcome you all. We welcome all esteemed guests for this event. This event is buying properties in Singapore. All you need to know. Our guest speaker is Mr. Vairavan. Okay, this event, we are proud to say that it's proudly organized by Kamla Club. So, as part of on behalf of Kamla Club, I welcome you all once again. And we are very happy to host this event, sir, Mr. Varu. And we are also proud of you that you have got into this venture. All the best to you. I would like to invite our Chocolate Club president, Mrs. Smrita Varghese, to give us a welcome speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalyani. Kalyani is our secretary, a Kamla Club secretary. Respected guests, all dignitaries, and all beloved Kamla Club members, a very warm welcome to all of you. And today, crucial session is on buying properties in Singapore. All you need to know. We often talk about roti, kapda, and makan, and today we are going to talk about Makam, buying a house. This is the most significant financial decision for any individual, yet women has historically not been the, prior, giving that much importance to buy a house. But when Saundarya has approached me, we said yes, it is very beneficial for the ladies who will know the first house is very important. And then she has mentioned about Mr. Vairavan that he's going to tell his expertise. He's a data scientist, and it's honor to have you here and giving us the good tips on buying the house. Thank you so much. And I just want to quickly brief about our Kamla Club. Kamla Club is a non-profit organization. It's the name has given in 1950. Before it's a different name. It was since 1919. So we have all walks of life, ladies, and we do charity, and all our cultural events are all charitable basis. So do join, and whatever event comes, do support us. We have a Facebook and website also. And please, we will be telling us about our upcoming events. So do join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Smita, Kamala Club, for the welcome note. Yeah, once again, I would like to say Kamala Club is a very old organization, 75 years old organization, and we welcome all ladies to join us to contribute to the society. Having said that, let's move on to the next segment. Up next, Mr. Vairavan will be giving us a talk on the various aspects of property related matters. I would like to give a brief on him, his credits, before he gives us this speech. He is a tech and data insight specialist at Oh My Home Singapore. He leads the real estate research across Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Regularly featured on CNA Radio and CNA TV as a property expert. Expertise, data strategy, predictive models, and relative real-time dashboards for property insights. Academic masters in management, analytics, first class honors in international business. Can we have a round of applause for it? As I said earlier, the topic for today is buying properties in Singapore. All you need to know. I think this is the need of the hour for youngsters, also for the generations who own property already, who want to upgrade or change their properties. I think it's going to be useful for everyone across the island. So, without wasting more time, I will pass on the mic to Mr. Vairavan, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly set up the slide. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming down. Special thanks to the Kamala Club for giving us a platform to talk about properties in Singapore. So I'm Vairavan. So for today, it will be very simple. We will start with the basics of properties. What are the different properties that you can buy in Singapore, the eligibility requirements, and then we'll move on to a little bit on property investment. There's been a lot of new regulations in the past 5 to 6 years, and it's very hard to be a real estate investor owning multiple properties. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what are some of the alternatives that you have if you want to invest in a second property for investment purposes. There'll also be a segment on upgrading your current house and how you can use the property market as a ladder to build generational wealth as well as build up assets. So basically, climb up the property ladder. Okay, so without further ado, let me just begin. Okay, so quick disclaimer before we start. So this presentation is for informational and educational purposes. I'm not a licensed agent, so this is not any advice on property transactions or advice on what property to buy. If for that you have to get a licensed agent. But this is also the special thing. Since I'm not a licensed agent, I'm not going to earn any commission or anything by selling any property to you. So it's all from a very clear basis of just a research basis and very educational. So it'll be very different from what you'd usually hear in property talks. So there's about 36,000 agents. There's only a handful of research analysts. So what you hear usually is actually very, very different from what you'll hear today. Okay, maybe before we go in, I'm going to assume majority of the audience here would probably be owning your own house. Singapore has a 90% ownership rate. But maybe a show of hands, anybody has another investment property that you have purchased? Okay, I don't think there's too many. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the objective of the talk would be to equip you with comprehensive knowledge to make informed property decisions in Singapore. So transform you from just a potential buyer to a strategic property investor. So when I say investor, I don't mean just buying another property, but it can also be upgrading your current property. In the end of the day, in Singapore, for most, if not all, their property would be the biggest chunk of their net worth or their net assets. So it's really a dual nature. Property is just not for staying, unlike bigger countries. In Singapore, there's a real appreciation and real asset nature to it as well. So, some key statistics. So, Singapore has one of the highest home ownership rates, 90.8%. This is due to the whole concept of public housing and how there's subsidies, and the government has been very proactive in ensuring that anybody and everybody can own a house. Some other statistics. So across the board, annually, properties in terms of capital appreciation have been recording around 5% year on year. And so for the past 20 years, every single year, property value has actually beat inflation. So it's actually a pretty good asset to hold. Rental incomes, however, they are still on the low side when you compare to other countries at around 2 to 4%. But the good thing about Singapore is there are no capital gains tax. So all the money that you get from investing in property, you get to keep minus the property tax. Okay, very quickly, a few things that make the Singapore market a very unique market is the land scarcity. So of course, 719 square kilometers although the government is reclaiming land, there is a certain level that they can claim up to, and we are starting to reach a saturation point. So strong regulations, URA and HDB, they ensure market stability. So this is good and bad. It's good because you can make sure that your property values won't drop. There won't be property bubbles. But it's bad because if you're expecting a very quick return on properties, Singapore is just not the place for you. It's very safe and you'll get a certain amount of returns every year, but you can't expect to double your money in 10 years. Maybe 10, 20 years ago, you could have done that. But right now, the market is very saturated and has evolved with all these regulations. Of course, as we all know, Singapore is a very, very strong global financial hub. So we're ranked number 3 financial hub. A lot of capital, a lot of talent inflow, a lot of companies setting up their Asia Pacific headquarters here. So in terms of demand for housing, it's always there. The demand is so great that the government has had to put down so many different regulations. These regulations are great because it stops a situation like Hong Kong, where property prices were going higher and higher and higher until during the pandemic. Right after the pandemic, when interest rates were higher, the whole property market collapsed. And what happened when the property market collapsed is the whole economy goes down with it, because most property is bought with leverage, mortgage from the bank. And when property prices start going down, people can't repay. The bank has many properties that they now can't sell, or they have to sell at a very discounted price. So there's a lot of capital exit, and that will have a ripple effect onto all the other asset classes. Okay, so this is the next section, basics and eligibility. So what property options you have. So we'll be talking mainly about 4 different property types. We'll start with public housing, then we'll move on to executive condominiums, which is very, very much hybrid. Then we'll go to condominiums and landed properties, and finally, commercial and industrial. Okay, public housing, very quickly. So the eligibility for public housing, especially for BTOs, only Singapore citizens are eligible for BTOs, and you have a max ceiling of $14,000 or $21,000 for a multi-generational home, $14,000 for all other flat types. And this is combined income ceiling. So if you are applying with somebody else, your spouse, it'll be a combined ceiling. Okay, so there's a minimum occupation period. This is not just for BTOs, but resale as well. So currently it's 5 years, but the government has released new flat types under Prime and Plus. So all the new BTOs, they'll all have these classifications. Those that are in prime areas, in the city areas, city fringe areas, or those that are in the other towns, Ang Mo Kio, Bishan, Punggol, if they are near malls and MRTs, they'll be put under the Plus. So what this means is that it'll be a 10-year MOP. So if you bought that property for 10 years, you can't sell it away. But of course, there's a lot of restrictions to HDB. But the great thing is there are a lot of grants, right? Up to $190,000 of grants. And the grants are really good in the sense where you can pretty much get away with not paying any down payment and paying your monthly mortgage straight from your CPF. Okay, next we'll go to executive condos. So this would be the first upgrade path for anybody that is currently living in a HDB and your MOP period is up. Okay, so for executive condos, there are 2 stages. The first stage is year 1 to year 10. This is where you will buy directly from the developer. So there is an income ceiling of $16,000, and there's also a 5-year MOP. So after the 5 years, you can sell the property, but you can only sell it to Singapore citizens or PRs. And after the 10th year, it becomes a fully privatized project. So it just becomes like every other condominium. You can transact it in the open market. So what are the key benefits of executive condos? Oftentimes you get them at a 25 to 30% discount from comparable condominium projects. But the downside, of course, is you have an income ceiling. There are some restrictions. You have to stay there for 5 years. But at the end of the 10th year, you will definitely make a windfall, which you can cash out and then move to another property. So next on our list is private condos. So private condos, anybody can buy private condos. Doesn't have to be just Singaporeans or PRs. Foreigners can buy as well. There's no income ceiling, no MOP restrictions, and you just have to be 21 years old. But one thing to note is they do have the ABSD, which we will go into a little bit later, as well as the SST. These are additional taxes that you have to pay upon purchase of the property if you fall under certain boxes. Okay, lastly, we will go into landed properties. So landed properties, only Singapore citizens can buy landed properties in mainland Singapore. In Sentosa, anybody can buy, but if you're a non-Singapore citizen, you have to get an approval. So for foreigners, you require a special approval from the Land Dealings Approval Unit, except for Sentosa Cove, where the approval is much easier to get. But the whole of Sentosa Cove, it's a 99-year leasehold. Okay, so now we'll talk about the ABSD. So the ABSD is an additional buyer's stamp duty. So for any additional property that you buy other than your own, you will start to pay additional taxes. So if you're a Singapore citizen, second property is 20%, third property and onwards is 30%. So if it's a $1 million property, even before you buy it, you have to pay $200,000 to the government as a stamp duty. So this was done to really curb and cool down the property market. And if you look at, for foreigners, it's at a 60%. So if it's a $2 million property, even before that guy can buy the property, he has to spend $1.2 million on taxes. But there are about 5 countries where they have a free trade agreement. US is one of them. So if you're an American citizen, you enjoy the same rates as Singapore citizens when buying properties. Okay, so ABSD free alternatives will be commercial and industrial. They don't have any ABSD. Foreigners can purchase. And currently, as it stands, it has a higher rental yield at about 5% across the board. But the cons, it is much harder to get financing. The loan to value ratio, something we'll go on a bit deeper later, tends to be much, much lower, right? So anywhere from 60 to 80%. So if the property is worth $1 million, you might only be able to secure $600,000 worth of financing. The other $400,000 has to come from usually cash because CPF can't be used for down payment either. And one additional thing is that GST may apply. So if you're buying an industrial or commercial property from a Singapore registered business, if the property is under a business and that business is GST registered, you'll have to pay 9% GST. Unless, of course, you have a company that's GST registered as well, and your company is buying over that property, then you can claim that GST back. Okay, so this is the key takeaway for this section. So if you're a first-time buyer, depending on your income cap, HDB or EC is the best option. Except for the very few who have a very, very high income ceiling, they can then go for condos. So usually people with HDB, they will go into ECs or they'll upgrade into condos. After that, usually people stop at condos. Landed houses are really falling out of fashion. The prices are going very high, maintenance is very high. And if you're an investor and you have a lot of capital to spend, commercial or industrial is a good choice. But if you're a foreigner looking to get into the market, unfortunately, you only have commercial or industrial properties. Okay, so now let's just look at some of the problems that people will face when you are buying an investment property in Singapore. So this has been the most challenging market in a decade. So ABSD hikes. From 2011, it started, and right now it's at about 60%, 20% for Singaporeans, second home, 30% for third home and onwards. Loan restriction, the TDSR and LTV, they've really been tightened. So the amount that you can afford with your income has been decreased greatly. This is both for investors as well as people looking to upgrade their homes. Elevated interest rates, although interest rates have been coming down recently, They are still not at a level that we saw right after COVID or just before COVID either. Record high prices. Prices keep going up. Despite all these restrictions, prices keep going up across all properties, especially HDB. We'll go into some of the numbers later. Liquidity risk. So it's getting harder to transact properties nowadays. So if you have your money locked up in properties and you need to quickly exit if something happens, it's going to be a bit harder because the market has slowed down a little bit. Okay, so ABSD hikes. So foreign buyers transactions, especially in the central region, if you are living in the central region or if you have a property in the central region, the demand there has completely fallen off. If you look at the price increases in the core central region, usually your Orchard Road, Raffles City Hall, demand has virtually fallen off. So if you look at the price gains in the past 2 to 3 years, they are almost non-existent, maybe 1% a year. So locals face 20% ABSD on a second property. Because of that, many people are not buying a second property, or what they do is they buy it under their spouse's name. Okay, so now this is more of an important part, the financing squeeze. So we'll talk about 3 very important concepts. So the TDSR, LTV, and MSR. So this will affect anybody that's looking to purchase any house with the financing. So the TDSR, total debt servicing ratio. So this is a calculation that the bank does with all of your debt. So it can be credit card debt, car loan, any loans. And depending on that, they'll allow you to borrow 55% of your income. So this is a number that they will generate based on what they can see in your finances. So this rate has been brought down quite a bit. It used to be 60%, but about 3 years ago, it got brought down to 55%. So this means that if your income didn't change, the value of the property that you can buy is essentially reduced. Beyond that, the TDSR, they have something called a stress rate. The stress rate is what they use to calculate future interest rate hikes. They've increased that to 4%. So what that basically means is that right now you can afford, the bank will give you a loan for a property that's even lower. Next, we have LTV, loan to value. So loan to value is now at 75%, which means 25% has to be a cash outlay or CPF outlay. The bank will only loan you 75% of the value of your property. Last thing is MSR, mortgage servicing ratio. So this only applies to HDB and EC. So there's a 30% cap. That means only 30% of your income can be used for repaying your housing loan. So all these factors and all these 3 things have been really tightened up. So in terms of financing for houses, it's much, much more difficult right now. And so for HDB, the way they are countering this tightening is by offering more subsidies. But of course, for these subsidies, you need to meet a certain income level, right? So the government is basically saying that we'll do our best for the private estates, but for HDB, instead of just reducing the prices or reducing the MSR, we'll just give subsidies.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If this is what they're trying to do, how come the HDB prices are touching 1 million? Who's really buying all these HDBs?
Good question. So for HDB resale, there's no income ceiling or anything. Anybody can buy. The only requirement is they can't hold any other residential property. So there are a lot of people, especially older folks, children all married out, and there are just 2 of them staying in that house. They might want to downgrade, right? So they'll sell their condominium, have a good profit. There's, I believe, a 15-month wait-out period. After the 15 months, they can go into the HDB market and then they can start buying properties. So quite a number of cases such as that. And usually at the higher end, that's why you see the $1 million properties going up. But if you were to go for less desirable areas, the resale market for HDBs, you can still find 500, 600,000 easily. But of course, if you're going for the prime of the prime, where the demand is the highest and the competition is the highest, there will always be people that are willing and able to pay $1 million price tags.
So basically, they bypass this because they're paying in cash.
Yeah, that's a subset of them. But there's others who have, maybe in the past 3 to 4 years, their income has really gone up. So even with this cap, they can still afford.
I think it's more of the permanent residents who are getting into the secondary market. And that was a survey which was mentioning after the COVID point of crisis.
So there's a lot of different factors, right? But the main thing is that all these things in tandem is now causing the prices, especially at the upper ends, to go up. But if you look at the middle and the lower ends, the price increase is much more lesser. But at the upper end, there will always be more competition. But that's why the HDB has released new guidelines for their prime and plus flats with 10-year MOPs, and even on the sale of the flat, you have to pay back a percentage to the government. You can't rent out the whole place. You can only rent out certain rooms to ensure that people are only buying it for their own stay purposes.
What will be your solution on refinancing?
Okay, so for refinancing, it will really depend on the interest rates that are, the interest rate trend. Is it going up or is it going down? Usually, I would recommend not to refinance. It's a big process, and to refinance, you might have to pay a sum to your current bank to let you off that scheme.
That we have an option of the refinance.
Mm-hmm.
And which way do you go? Because the current way we are, with the interest rate, it's sort of heading down. Right?
Yep.
And instead of floating, which one to go for?
So in Singapore, all rates will eventually become floating rates. So if it's a downward trend, usually going for floating would be better. But if you're looking at if you think the interest rates are going to go up, going for fixed right now will be better. So it really depends on how the rates are going to go. But right now, there's a lot of speculation that the rates will be going down. So right now, going floating might be better, because if you take a fixed loan amount, and if the interest rates goes even lower than the fixed that you have applied for, you will be paying more than what you would have otherwise if you took a floating option. But of course, we can never tell, we can never predict the future, but everybody is thinking that the rates are going to go down further.
And you also run a risk in terms of the loan to value, which you just mentioned, right? Because when you had initially taken the loan, then if it was like 1 or 2 years before, where the rates were like went up because of the COVID and people wanted to buy houses to work from home.
Yep.
And now, relatively, the prices are not dropped, but at least cooled down a bit. So when they use the LTV now, you might end up, they ask you to pay the differential. Isn't it?
When you're refinancing?
With the same bank.
With the same bank, I'm not too sure on this, because LTV is usually on the point of purchase. I'm not too sure if it affects when you're refinancing as well.
One of the banks told me, because when you take the same bank, and you have an option to refinance, because they give you after 1 year, you can choose to, depending on the rates and all, right?
Yep.
At that point in time, they reassess.
Ah,
So when they reassess, they again do an LTV, that's something as if it's like a, and then they compare with the value that was at the time when you initially took versus the value where it stands now.
correct.
And depending on the move,
So if you had,
then no problem. But if it's slightly gone down, then you have to pay a lump sum.
correct. And another thing is that if you took the loan when before 2021, when it was 60%, and if you, as you said, if they're going to redo the calculations and it's 55% now, that will really affect your loan, right? But I'm not a mortgage expert, so I think this would be better handled with someone in the know. Yeah, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll look at interest rates. So I know it's a bit small, but this is the interest rates in the past 4-5 years, starting from 2022. This is right after COVID. You can see that the rates are at 0.5%. So these are 3-month compounded SORA rates. So these are the rates that are used for Singapore housing loans mainly. Of course, this doesn't include the bank float, which would usually be about 1%. So they started right below 0.5%, right around the end of 2022, start of 2023, it starts peaking at about 3.5%. And then right now it's starting to come down, and people are expecting the US Fed to lower their rates further. And the US Fed rates have a direct impact on Singapore's rates. So what does this mean? What this means is if you had taken a loan of 1.5%, a floating loan in 2022 for a $1 million property, you might be paying about $3,500 a month. But at 4%, all of a sudden you're paying $4,800 a month. So that's quite a big jump. So that's why you always have to be very, very careful of rates. It's great when they are very low, but a single point of percentage difference could mean your monthly payments now start to go up much, much higher.
What is the tenure of the loan you are referring to? 1.9%, 3%, 500. What is the tenure?
One second, I believe it's 20 years. So it's almost a 37% increase, even though the interest rate went up 2.5%. Next, record high prices. So the RCR, rest of central region, this would be regions like Bishan, would be regions like Toa Payoh, Alexandra. These have, right now they are at an average of $2,384 per square foot. So these used to be around 1,700, 1,800 just 5-6 years ago. And even OCR is now $1,700 per square foot. This was usually around the $900 to $1,100 range. So all these are for condos, of course. Then for CCR, CCR is at about 2,335 PSF average. So if you see, RCR has actually overtaken CCR in terms of average PSF. So what we are seeing right now is CCR demand has gone down and the price increase has really gone down. And Singaporeans generally do not like to buy CCR properties. They are not very convenient, especially if you have a family, not near any schools, groceries, or any activities such as childcare and things like that. So people prefer the RCR and OCR, and all the demand, because it's all mainly local demand, it is all concentrated on the RCR and OCR regions. That's why we're seeing huge price increases there. Core Central region. So it will be your Raffles Place, your CBD basically, and Orchard Road. So new launches are now coming out at more and more record prices, oftentimes 20 to 30% above market rates. So the reason why they are coming up with even higher premium compared to the resale market for condos is they price in the future aspect. So it'll take about 3 or 4 years for the building to come up, and they're just pricing in the 3 or 4 year mark. But of course, with new launches, in terms of your loans, you get a little bit of leeway. You don't have to pay the full amount from the start. At different completion levels, you'll pay different loans. So the bank will release different amounts, and you only pay monthly on the amount that is released. Yeah. So entry price for a 2-bedroom condo is now 1.5 million plus. Even in the outside central region, OCR, Woodlands, there was a new launch about 5-6 months ago. The average price there was $2,000 per square foot at Woodlands. So that's really astronomical prices. Okay, liquidity risk. So with all of the market slowing down a little bit, especially with how they've tightened financing, your money is now locked in longer. So new home sales plunged 64.1% in 1 quarter of 2025. So this is all for new launches only, right? So new launch has been dropping 64.1% down in 1 quarter in 2025. There's a lot of unsold inventory. Developers have to sell all their units by 5 years. If not, they risk having to pay ABSD. Especially in the core central region, they are struggling to offload their extra units or their inventory. In the RCR and OCR, it's still very easy. So if you are in the CCR and you buy a property, chances are it's going to be a little bit harder to offload it. Okay, next, we'll go through wealth building through real estate. I think this would be something that most people would be interested in.
Sorry, can you
Yeah.
repeat the offloading part is that?
Okay, so that offloading part is mainly for new launch condos, right? When you buy a new launch condo, especially in the core central region, what's happening is that the market is slowing down in terms of new launch condos because of the reduced demand. So what happens is that it's going to be harder for you to sell it later because of the reduced demand, unless they remove the ABSD or they attract more buyers into the region.
Reduction in demand is due to?
Sorry?
Reduction in demand is due to?
So the reduction in demand in the CCR has traditionally been because of that 60% ABSD, right? And there have been a lot of new launches that are coming up, and they're just not doing as well as their RCR or OCR counterparts, mainly because Singaporeans usually do not want to buy, or even if Singaporeans want to buy, they want to buy it as an investment property. And with a 20% ABSD, it's scaring a lot of people off. So the demand is much lower there. So when you try to offload it, the same problems will probably exist. Okay. So in an ideal world, we've heard about the American dream, but I think this would be the Singaporean dream. You would probably start off with your first house, HDB. You build equity. Then after that, once the HDB has gone up in value a little bit, what you'll do is you will offload the HDB and upgrade to an EC. There will still be some subsidies for you. It'll still be priced below market. And then from EC, once your EC now gains a bit more value, you'll go into private condo after offloading your EC. And then private condo, a lot of people like to stop at private condo, but if your private condo does really well, you can then now get into the landed property. So although this isn't really property investing, this is just a ladder that you can follow to upgrade your house. Okay, so how to climb? Unlocking your equity. So with CPF, you can really accelerate your property growth or climb the property ladder. So 20% of the property value can come from CPF, 5% cash, you'll have to put out 5% cash, and 75% can be a loan, right? So for first-time EC buyers, you can get a grant of almost $30,000. So from your HDB to your EC upgrade, it's usually quite straightforward. So you'll sell your existing property, realize the capital appreciation. You'll still have to refund CPF, usually around 2.5%. And the cash proceeds can then now be used for the 5% cash outlay. And you can still use your CPF, provided you have enough. Usually people do. And then 75% can be covered by the bank. Of course, with this, you probably would have higher monthly payments. But the whole idea is your income would have grown to a certain stage by then. Okay, so let's look at a real example. All right, so if someone 6 years ago bought a $450,000 BTO, today's value would be $600,000, right? So let's say within this 6 years, they've managed to pay off most of their loans. Let's say they have $100,000 of existing or outstanding loans. So their CPF used and accrued interest would be about $250,000. But you'll get a gross proceeds, $600,000, out of which $250,000 you'll have to pay back to your CPF, minus $100,000 for the outstanding loan. You'll have $150,000. So with that $150,000, you can now purchase a private condo. So 5% cash outlay, $65,000. From the $150,000 proceed, you can put the cash outlay. So the 20% can be paid by CPF. So you already had paid $250,000 back to the CPF when you sold your HDB. So for a $1.3 million property, that would be about $260,000. So you can comfortably use that to pay the 20% CPF. And of course, 75% bank loan, you'll be able to get it. Of course, as long as you have the LTV and TDSR in control. But in reality, what will happen is that for you to do this change, you would probably lose a few things. So maybe the condo might not be in the best of locations, might be further away from amenities, and also it might be much smaller, right? So there is a cost of upgrading this way. Although it's easy, you will probably lose spaces. You lose a lot of space and you will lose convenience, but it's possible.
Sorry, this doesn't take into account a lot of things, right? Because you still have to pay stamp duty, renovation, agent fees, legal and everything. So it's not just a straight upgrade, The overall cost is way more than 25%.
Yes, it will be more than 25%, but in terms of stamp duty, agent costs, and things like that, that would be at most 3 to 4%. But of course, renovation, that will be subjective to everybody else. But it is just to show that it is possible to roll over your capital, both your CPF as well as the property's appreciation. Of course, it's not a one-to-one exchange. You will have to pay more because you are getting a property that's valued at a much higher rate, 600,000 compared to 1.3 million. So it's not a one-to-one exchange. But it is possible to upgrade without having to pay too much cash upfront. Okay, so now let's look at the returns or the growth, price growth for HDB versus condo. So for HDB, 15-year gain. So if you had bought a HDB, for example, in Tampines, 15 years ago, for $450,000, at the 10th year mark, so 5 years ago, it would have been valued at about $712,000 and 15-year value. So right now, so if I bought it at 2010 for $450,000, right now the value is about $896,000. So over 15 years, it's pretty much doubled almost. So the same thing for condo, okay? So a Tampines condo, you bought it for $1.5 million in 2010 and putting in a 6.3% annual appreciation, which is a historical average. At the 15-year mark right now, it is about almost 3.7 million. So the gain over 15 years is almost 2.25 million. But we have to take into note that 2010, the market was a lot more softer, much, much softer. Over the years, the market, especially for condos, has been going higher and higher. They put in all the regulations, so we can't expect the same amount of price growth, but it's just to show that between HDB and condo really gains almost 3 times faster. So that's why if you are in a HDB right now, it might be good to consider how you can upgrade to a condo because the appreciation for condo is much, much higher, especially for building generational wealth and things like that. It would be better to be in a condo. On the flip side, there are the risks, right? Some of the risks that you mentioned, okay? So over-leveraging. Over-leveraging is always a killer, not just in property, but in any investment. When you borrow cash, there's always a risk because things might be going well and you might be getting an income stream, but touch wood, you might never know what's going to happen in the future. And you'll still have a tax liability. So it is very, very important. Although it's 55%, you probably want to be a lot more careful on this. Don't over leverage yourself. Always plan for any rainy days. Okay, so timing the market. A lot of people like to time the market, but with the regulations that are in place, both ABSD as well as SSD. SSD is seller stamp duty. For condos, you can't sell your property within 4 years of buying it without having to pay taxes. Starts at 16% all the way to 4% at the 4th year. So yeah, so that's the liquidity lock-in. MOP and SSD means you can't sell. There's no capital exit. You are locked in, right? For the case of HDB, MOP will only be waived off in very specific case-by-case basis. Success rate is very low. And for condo, in terms of the SSD, you will have to pay. First year, 16%, second year, 12%, third year, 8%, fourth year, 4%, fifth year, it goes down to 0%. So the golden rule, it is a ladder, not a lottery. So back last time, you could just buy any property and the price would probably go up, especially after 2010. But right now, you have to be a little bit more strategic because property prices are very high. So you have to ensure that you're not over leveraging yourself and ensure that you have a proper planned path. It's still possible to have real estate success, but it takes a lot more strategy and a lot more thinking through. Okay, I'll very quickly go into commercial and industrial. Okay, so for commercial and industrial, there are no ABSD. So at most, you have to pay a 9% GST. So these are a few options. So you have strata, office, and retail. So usually these are in a building. They will have different units, and you buy that specific unit that you can then rent out. So for example, this is an industrial building, and this is a unit in an industrial building. So instead of having to purchase a whole industrial building, you'll buy just this unit, and you can rent it out and get rental returns. But the problem is usually commercial, they have very high vacancy rates, especially during market downturns. The first people to get out are those that are in commercial spaces. They'll be the first to vacate. So if you're paying a mortgage on these properties and it's during a market downturn, it's a double whammy.
So, but there is any restrictions to buy the commercial property?
No, there are no restrictions. Anybody can buy, but you might have to pay a 9% GST if that property is owned by a company that's GST registered.
Private person?
Can
foreigners buy?
Foreigners can buy, yes. So if a private individual is holding, then you don't need to pay that GST.
But the bank, they don't give you this anti-erosion
No.
commission, right? They give you 60.
Yeah, closer to 55 or 60. It's case by case. They can give you up to 80%, but usually it's about 60 to 65%.
But can I take the money from CPF for the?
No. For commercial and industrial, CPF can be used at all.
CPF?
No, only for residential.
What would be the leasing period in which very close to how safe for the
Sorry?
leasing period? Because many industrial buildings 30 years.
So
Remaining 10 years.
remaining 10 years, 20 years, the bank won't lend you. So below 30 years, the bank usually won't lend you. So that's why you can see property prices for spaces with less than 30 years, they'll really start to plummet. So so it'll probably be better to buy.
The bank say the occupier could not endorse and the bank considers like the study.
Sorry?
The bank say
Mhm.
commercial property by the bank because not the occupier did not pay.
Yeah. So there are a few cases such as that. So it is slightly more riskier for sure, more so than residential.
Normally, the industrial properties, commercial properties comes on 30-year lease,
Yes.
most of them.
Yes.
Is that renewable? Do you think they will renew it?
They can probably renew for 5 years, 10 years, but beyond that, it's all up to URA. So they can submit requests to URA for extension, but usually after that tenure, the government will just take the land back.
Not on the long term basis, like 30 years, additional 30 years.
Additional 30 years is very, very hard because usually they would probably have to pay a top-up sum to URA, and 30 years later, URA would have to make sure that that space, industrial space, is still okay for the surrounding area. That will be their main concern. So if you have an industrial space and in 30 years, all the other HDBs, condos have come up around, more families moving in, they probably won't renew the tenure for much longer.
The government have any rebuilding or retail They may not extend the tenure. Like buildings are so strong. They may not stop 100 years. There are 3 more levels. Then we have to go for 3 more. Or 999.
Yep. Then it's much more safer. So, I mean, the one good thing about industrial is logistics market has really been picking up. So the highest rental yields come from warehouses and e-commerce spaces, almost 6%, which is something that's pretty much unheard of. Some are even going 7-8%. But of course, industrial is actually subjected to SSD, industrial properties. So I believe it's about 15%, 3 years, 2 years, 10%, 1 year, 5%. So you can't do a very easy flip. You have to wait 3 years. Okay, so this would be, the next one would be shop houses. Shop houses would probably be the hardest to get into because the capital outlay is massive. Right now, about the cheapest you could probably buy is 5-6 million, up to 10, 15, 20, even 40 million if you're looking at the shop houses around Chinatown. But it's always a very good investment because there are finite amount of shop houses, conservation shop houses especially. So in theory, the prices will continue to go up. What if you don't want to invest in any physical properties? Are there any other options? So we have two. So you have REITs, real estate investment trusts, and you also have fractional ownership. So REITs, real estate investment trusts, what will happen is that a developer or usually a property company, if they have 5 or 6 different buildings that are generating revenue, they can put this into a trust and they can sell units, or you can think of it as shares of this trust. So they can sell it on the open market, very much like trading stocks. And the returns that you get on each share or unit that you buy will depend on the returns that the trust makes. So this is actually a very good option. Traditionally, in the past few years, getting about 4 to 7% yield, which is actually much better than having a second condo as an investment property, which is getting about 3 to 4%. Fractional ownership is something new. A lot of platforms are coming up where a few smaller buyers come in to buy a property. But I wouldn't recommend this because it is a lot more riskier. So, of course, entry is lower, 10 to 25,000, but it's not as liquid, and also the returns that you will get would be much more minuscule. Okay, very quickly, I'll go into the past, present, and the future of the housing market. Okay, so 2000 to 2013. So to give you some context, in 2000, property prices were extremely low. It was right after the 1997 financial crisis. So prices were going up until then, and they actually started coming down. So in 2000, you could probably get a 3-bedroom condo in Orchard Road for $800,000. Right now, it'd be about 4 million. So then at about 2006, that's when prices finally picked up to 1997 levels. From then, it's just been going up higher and higher and higher. This is where you hear people making 2 times, 3 times return on their investment. It's that golden age between 2000 and I'd say 2015. So back then, the regulations were much lower, no ABSD, 90% LTV. And 2013, because the property market was getting so hot, the government started introducing TDSR, ABSD, and that really put a pressure on demand. But prices still continued to go up. They made a lot of different changes to ABSD throughout the years. Finally, right now, I believe it's in a much more stable area where it still is affordable to a certain aspect, and you still get some returns. Okay, so the present. So as we talked about, growth is slowing. So you get about 0.5% quarterly growth. So it can be about 2.3 to 2.5% yearly. Rents have been very strong recently, but they are starting to stabilize. Rental was actually really bad before COVID. For a property in Orchard, a 3-bedroom property in Orchard, rental rates were like 4,000 to 5,000. Right now, the same thing would be about 8,000. So right now, the main things that are affecting the market are the ABSD as well as the tightening of financing. Okay, so the future, when we look at the demand and supply, so the households are generally shrinking. Household size has fallen from 3.96 to 3.09 in the past 20 years. And population has also grown to 6 million currently in 2024. So what this means is there is some demand. Households are getting smaller, people are moving out, population size is increasing, so demand is going up. And in terms of supply, the government has been very good at both releasing new HDB sites as well as GLS sites for private property. Okay, so in the immediate future, the US Fed rates are expected to go even lower, which will affect Singapore's SORA rates directly. Singapore still remains a global safe house for capital inflows. Of course, then we have geopolitics. We have the trade wars, especially with the US on their tariffs, as well as different wars that are going on. So these are always risks for recession. So the world is still in a very unstable position. Although interest rates are going down, on the other side, there's a lot of issues with supply chain tariffs and whatnot. So we still have quite a shaky economy. And we'll just quickly run through this. Okay, so this is what we talked about before. So higher interest rates means lower affordability and softer demand. So it's always a cycle. When interest rates go up, the demand goes down and the prices tend to not rise as much. In other countries, the price will actually drop, but in Singapore, in the past 20 years, except for that one quarter of COVID, prices have been going up higher and higher. So that's the Singapore's twist. So we always have a certain level of demand and supply that's still a bit tight. So that's why you have a case where even during downturns, property prices either stay still or they still go up slightly. Okay, so which are the different property types that give you the best rental yield? So currently, industrial gives you about 6.2%. Commercial offices give you 5.5%. These are all average numbers. So suburban condos in the OCR, 4.2%. HDB flats, 3.6%. And prime condo CCR sits at just 2.9%.
It's per annum.
Sorry?
Per annum.
Per annum. So yeah, per annum without taking into account things like your property tax, maintenance, things like that. So this is just the baseline number. Okay, so
Sorry, the previous one was mainly on the rental yield, right? What about from the capital appreciation standpoint, meaning the equity appreciation standpoint?
so equity appreciation, currently the OCR would probably have the most capital appreciation percentage-wise. When you're looking at average, industrial and commercial have a potential to give you even better capital appreciation, but that really depends on the market as well as the specific location. Because industrial and commercial is spread all over Singapore, those that are further away or those that are built, for example, industrial, if it's built for a factory space and that factory space does not have a demand, the appreciation will be lower. So overall, your OCR will probably have the highest appreciation. But commercial and industrial, if you go into specific cases like e-commerce, it will probably have a higher appreciation. Okay, so very quickly, case study, 1.5 million condo, buying in 2018 versus buying in 2024. This is just to show how your ROI would be very different, just to show how right now it's much harder to invest in properties. So in 2018, the interest rate was about 2%. Monthly payment would have been about $3,900 for a $1.5 million property. Cash outlay would have been at $555,000 because of the higher LTV, and which means a 5-year annualized return, you can get 6.8%. If you were to buy the same property right now, let's say $1.5 million, interest rates are slightly higher, 3.4%. Your monthly payment as a result will be higher, 25% increase. Cash outlay has to increase because of the tightened LTV, which means your 5-year annualized ROI would now just be 3.1%. So in 2018, people would have achieved 2.2 times better annualized returns. Okay, so this one I'll just skip this through because of limited time. Very quickly, we'll go into the risks and the cons of investing, be it commercial or residential. So tenant and vacancy risks, especially if you have a mortgage and you're depending on rental returns to pay off your mortgage, even if your property stays vacant for 1 or 2 months, that can lead to about 8 to 15% reduction in your yearly return from that property. So hidden costs, we'll go through this. Policy risks and illiquidity. So your income is not guaranteed. If you can rent out your place, great, you get that income. But if you can't, if your property stays vacant, 1 month of vacancy per year erodes your annual return by 8%. So this is what we're talking about. So gross yield, which is what we saw in a few slides ago, but there are other costs, right? So for condo properties, you have your MCST fees anywhere from $300 to $1,000. Right now it's about $500 to $600 per month. Property tax, so 10 to 20% for non-resident usage. And of course, you have repairs and insurance, which all eats into your rental yield.
So it's not only the bigger cost factor is, which is not often discussed, the income you earn from rental, you put it as part of your income tax, right? Which means you're paying.
No. That will go under capital gains, and Singapore has 0% capital gains tax.
So you sell it, if you earn the rental income, that income that you earn from rental, you have to declare it and they put it, like you have to pay income tax on that.
No, because it's considered as an investment gain. So if it's an investment gain, you don't pay any tax in Singapore currently, 0%. What you have to pay instead is the property tax.
I don't think so. You have to pay both. You have to pay both. It doesn't, only if you sell it, yeah, it's capital gain. But if you earn the rental income, you have to pay income tax on the rental income, which is a huge percentage.
Okay.
So you basically your slab goes up, right? Because that up to your whatever salary. You move up the slab, so you pay higher tax on everything basically. Income tax goes up. Significantly.
Okay. Good point. Okay. So another thing is policies. So the government has been increasing cooling measures and whatnot, and this can affect the property prices. So you might have bought a property in 2010 expecting gains that you saw past 10 years, but because of these cooling measures, what ends up happening is the market softens and you don't get that return. Especially illiquidity in a slow market, it's harder to sell, especially when everybody's trying to sell at the same time. It's going to be harder. It's going to take you longer to sell. Okay, so we're coming up to the last part, closing message. Okay, so what doesn't work anymore is you can't just buy, wait a few years, and just flip for instant profits. So we have several hidden costs, such as the things that we have talked about, that will really bite into your property investment. So what I want to go at is,
So, what if we invest in a new property, before something that's being built, condos, and then upon TOP you sell it? Are you saying that even in that scenario you cannot make any profit?
it'll still be hard.
Newly launched into
TOP. That's my question. Not the resale one.
Yeah, because you are already paying a higher amount from the start, and you also have to take into account your financing costs. So when you put all that into, take all that into account.
I have 5 years, right?
You have 5 years, but correct. But the thing is, you are going in at a much higher price. They've already priced in that 5 years. So usually you won't be able to get that return. Yeah, so it won't be viable.
Price of like
5 years later,
price into the purchase price, so you won't make a profit.
so 25-30% higher usually. Yeah, so usually it's very risky because at that point you might not even know if you can turn a profit. Okay, so the whole idea is, I think it's going to be very hard to invest in properties in Singapore, but what you can do is build up the property ladder. So the three P's: planning. You have to do very proper planning. The prices are going up, harder to get financing. Patience. So you have to start thinking in 7 to 10 year cycles, especially because of the SSD and the 5-year MOP, 10-year MOP. And then I think it might be good to get a licensed agent that you can work with. Okay, so I think that might be my last slide. Can go into Q&A.
So what is your take on a condo? What is your take on new launches versus resale in the same location? But the agents, right, I think probably they get a big commission from the property owner. So all the agents, they always push the
New launch.
condo launches.
Yes.
And even if there is a comparable, like, condo next door at a cheaper price, they make sure that you don't buy it.
Yep.
So what is your take on that? Which is good from an appreciation standpoint?
Appreciation standpoint, for sure, I would say the resale. I would highly recommend the resale over the new launch, especially if it's for own stay. A lot of times, new sale is good because if you're going to stay in there, it's a brand new condo, brand new facilities, but you're paying a premium for it as well. But if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, newer condos fetch slightly higher rental rates than the resale ones surrounding, right? But ultimately, I'd say the resale market would be much better because you are starting off by paying much lesser, and then you have room for capital appreciation.
How about people buying condo in the announcement time and selling it by the time it gets completed? They really do profit in it.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
It's a bit harder now because property prices are not going up that much as they used to before. Last time it was possible because property prices were rising by a lot. But right now it's a lot more slower. And nowadays, condos get completed in 2 to 3 years. So even if you were to flip that way, you still have to pay SSD and you have your financing costs that you have already paid interest on your bank loan. So taking all that into account, the money that you'll make will probably be much lesser if you make any money at all.
So, I mean, to say this time, it's a good time to buy.
It's a good time, but I feel that in Singapore it's become less based on the market, more based on the financing available, so interest rates, because the market is extremely saturated. And what's happening is you'll always get a certain percentage of return. So I feel there's no good or bad time. It's just when the interests are lower and you forecast interest to be good.
There's still a lot of new launches. You see a lot of that.
Mhm.
And like you said, like 2 or 3 million ranges. So how are these, I mean, the builders making money, the market is saturated.
Well,
You should be able to sell it, right?
Yeah. So for the CCR, it's getting hard for them to sell. But the OCR and RCR, because of local Singaporean demand, it's getting much, much easier for them to sell. That's why you can see a lot of them within the first 2 weeks, 80% sold, 90% sold. And a lot of these areas, if you take, for example, Tampines, a lot of HDB upgraders from Tampines, they don't want to leave Tampines, but they want to upgrade their house. They then move into the condo because we are also seeing a lot of income growth, especially in the 25 to 34 year age group. There's a lot of income growth as well. So people are able to afford a condo, yes.
So what would be the mindset of youngsters, buying SPB, CPO or condo, or younger folks? How do they project the value in getting the area?
Okay, so I think for this, for most youngsters, to them, property is unaffordable. It's just something that's becoming very, very unaffordable. But in Singapore, if you are willing to make some sacrifices in terms of location, maybe in terms of going for a BTO, taking on some government subsidies, it's completely possible, right? But if you ask about going straight to a condo, I think it's going to be extremely hard unless it's the top 5% earners, especially for youngsters.
Because of the subsidy they can.
Because of the subsidies, HDBs become much more affordable.
But you said for BTO, they need to have 14,000, right? How
Yes.
many youngsters together have 14,000 as an entry level?
14,000 cap
Is the cap?
is the cap.
Cap.
It's a cap. Yeah. So
So with this trend going, you are a Singapore government announcing the mega city plan. Is it going to take in a right way or no?
it's very hard to say, but what we spoke about earlier is Singapore is still very land scarce. That's why you see a lot of demand. And I feel that the government, they don't put as much thought into the condos as much as HDB. They still put a lot of thought into condo, but their whole idea is keeping housing affordable through HDBs. So a lot of things that they've done, especially with the recategorization of PTOs, prime plus and your standard, it really goes towards reducing that into just a home for own stay, more so than an investment vessel. So I think moving forward, we'll see more of that. But I think the private market will still be left a little bit untouched, but they have the ABSD policy lever that they can adjust very quickly.
Previously, 20 years back, something motivation for us to invest in Western countries, Australia, and other places. Now, recently, we could see a lot of advertisement to invest in Dubai. What would be the perspective for the Singaporeans to make that?
So if you want to invest in Dubai or other overseas properties,
Events and attractions towards.
Especially UK, right?
yeah.
Before then, it was Western side like Canada, Europe side. But now recently, it is making more advertisement to invest in Dubai.
Yep.
Good advertisement.
So this is just how the global real estate market is shaping out to be in Dubai, especially because Dubai is just desert land. So they are coming up with mega development. A developer doesn't just build a building; they build the whole city, hospitals, malls, everything all in one. And the thing that they need the most is the demand, because you're just building these cities, but you don't have enough people to come in. So that's why right now their sales force is very big and they go all around the world, property shows, they try to work with local partners to try to get the sale in. But in terms of is it going to be a good investment, I think it would be more risky. It's not as safe as an investment as it would be in Singapore, although it probably has a lower cash outlay. But the whole point is you're investing in a country that you might not know too much about. So you have to be very, very careful.
I think it's something to do with the burden visa rule also, what Dubai is implementing now. So a lot of people moving into Dubai, so we buying the property.
Yep. So I think there's a lot of potential for growth, but the risks are as big as well. Any other questions?
See, with some of the financial advisors, right, you look at all the costs in terms of whatever you pay for the, duty as well as the maintenance industry. They say if you've got so much liquidity, what if you directly invest in equity? Won't that give you a better returns over this? Example, simple like S&P 500.
Yes.
Assume you just put the money
Yes.
straight in S&P 500.
Yes.
Rather than paying your mortgage, you straight away
Yes.
that money to S&P 500.
Yes.
And you look at the say another 15 to 20 years. Even though this asset looks big, like maybe equity people don't look at it that way. Won't it grow faster than property?
100%, without a doubt, because Singapore's property market has been growing really well. If you look at the past 20 years, if you look at the past 5 years, you can get about 2 to 3% return, and even your most basic index funds are giving you 4-5% right now. So if your main goal is really to invest and to get a return, going that way would be better. So that's why most of this talk has been about why investing is so hard. So it's really the focus on how you can upgrade your house using your equity and your CPF, rolling it over, more so than actually investing, because the returns that you're getting is much lesser compared to any other asset class, unfortunately.
I think it's not only in Singapore, globally that's the case. Even in India, buying a house when you are not staying there and giving it for rent, it's a totally absolute negative returns what you get.
Actually, India is very small.
Right?
Yeah. But capital appreciation is still okay, depending on the area. But there are still growth areas, countries that are up and coming, but it's also extremely risky because they are developing countries. At least in India, you might have somebody to take care of your property, but if it's some other country that's high potential, but you have nobody to take care of it, you wouldn't know. It's very, very high risk If no other questions, I think we can wrap it up here. It's 8:30. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
That was a very insightful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hope everyone got some lot of tips for your future investments. Okay, before we break for dinner, we have a couple of items to go. So we call upon Dr. Vairavan to give a present, which is a gold watch to Mr. Vairavan. It's so nice that Dr. Vairavan sir is a grandfather, none other than the grandfather of Mr. Vairavan, and he's going to give the gift, which is a gold watch, to his grandson. Can you have a round of applause, please? Okay.
Thank you very much for coming for this function. He's my grandson through my son. I know him growing up from a baby to this adulthood. He was a very playful boy. Now he has now attained adolescence. One incident I want to tell you. காது குத்துறதுக்கு வந்து பத்தர் வந்தார், அதே தட்டி விட்டேன், அது போய் விழுந்துருச்சு. இருந்தாலும் இவ்வளோ நல்லா டெவலப் ஆகி நல்லா வந்திருக்கேன். And I wish him all success in life. I am a doctor by profession, but I am interested in buying properties. When I buy, I don't sell. So I came from very humble beginnings. His name is Vairavan Shanmugam. Vairavan is the name of my grandfather, P.R.P. Vairavan Chettiar, who brought me to Singapore. 1949, when I was 8 years old. I got educated in Singapore. I studied in good school, Griffith School, primary school, secondary school, private institution, which is still the best school. My classmates were former Prime Minister, His Excellency, Mr. Gocho Chong and Tan Teng Bok. Then I went to India, did my pre-university in Noida, and did my medicine at Madina Medical College. Madina Medical College is a part of University of Madras. University of Madras is one of the oldest universities next to Oxford and Cambridge. In fact, it's a good university. I'm very happy that into properties. When I buy properties, I don't sell. I have properties in Singapore, properties in Chennai, properties in Karaikudi, properties in Achapuram. Yeah, and I wish you all success in this life.
Thank you, Dr. Vairavan sir. It was a great speech.
Yeah.
So now, Dr. Vairavan sir will be giving the gold watch to his grandson.
This envelope contains Sri Dandavani and a crossband that I bought in 1970. It's already 55 years now.
Wow.
I keep it as a treasure. I give it to my brother son. I wish him a very successful career. When you buy properties, don't sell. Keep them. My blessing to my grandson. With all love.
It's a great message.
Thank you very much for coming. And this is my brother. I've been a trustee of this temple for 3 terms, 1998, 2006, 2012. This is the pen I bought in 1970. This facility, I have given a golden watch, Indian watch, watch, and I've given
Just a photo?
to wish him all the best. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Giving my camera actually to actually to
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Thank you, Dr. Vaidyanathan sir. Thank you, everyone. Next, we call upon Madam Saudariya to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kalyani. Thank you each and everyone for coming here. Thanks to Kamala Club for accepting my request. To give a platform for my son to deliver this speech. This is his first speech. After 10 days of Navaratri, the busy period, on a Friday evening, thanks each and every single person present here for accepting our invitation to attend this talk and encourage my son, our son, and to support him. We wish you all bless him for more success and to give more talks. And Mr. Jeeva Jyothinathan for giving us this space. And thank you once again for coming here. And I wish Tambu all the best. Okay, wishing you more success. Now the food will be served. Thank you, Kalyani, for hosting. And thank you, Smita. Thank you all once again. Now food is served from Taste of India. Please kindly have dinner. Thank you all once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.